adjustment.
Yeah, I think he's getting the hang of it.
Well, good.
I'll let her know you asked.
Yeah, I know I haven't reached out, but she just had a birthday too. She has so much going on. My goodness. All right. We are at 11.
And you do
Missing a
have,
few folks.
yeah, you do have a quorum.
Thank you.
Lauren will not be here, but I know that they were lining up um, to fill in for her. So it's going to be Mel or it's going to be Dorothy. I don't see them. Maybe they've joined. Nope. Here comes Mel.
Great.
And we are being joined by one of one of my counterparts. He'll introduce himself. One of my counterparts in another basin council. Or I should say QUISP. My apologies. But
Well, let's do a quick round of intros then. I will start to set the um, desired information. Hi, I'm Lindsay White. I'm the director of the Missisquoi River Basin Association and your Basin Water Quality Council chair, and I am a voting member. And I'll just call on folks as I see them on my screen. So, Heidi, I see you're distracted, but I'm putting you on the spot.
Good morning, Heidi Bridge Valenta from the village of Swanton, voting member.
Sarah Downs,
Hi, Sarah Downs from Enosburg, and I am a voting member.
Ted,
Ted Siddell, Lanes County NRCD voting member.
Beth,
Good morning, everyone. Beth Torpy. I'm the water quality planner for NVDA, and I'm a voting member.
Ava,
Hello, my name's Ava Walsh. I'm the watershed coordinator with the Franklin Watershed Committee.
Kent,
Good morning, Ken Henderson, Chair of the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, and a voting member.
Dan,
Richford, voting member.
Lincoln,
Hi, everybody. Lincoln Frasca. I am with Central Vermont Clean Water, Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, and we are the Winooski Basin Clean Water Service provider. Thanks for having me.
Alaire,
Hi, everyone. Alaire Diamond, Ecology and Restoration Program Director at Vermont Land Trust, and I am a voting member.
Ellen,
Hi, I'm Ellen Fox with the Missisquoi River Basin Association, and I'm an alternate.
Bridget,
Northern Lake Champlain. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a non-voting guest.
Karen,
Karen Bates, DEC Watershed Planner for the Missisquoi, non-voting.
Pete,
Yeah, hi, I'm Pete Benevento. I represent the Lake Carmike Campers Association as well as the Franklin Watershed Committee, and I'm a guest.
Chris,
Hi there, I'm Chris Rotler. I work with DEC with Karen and the planning team and support the QUISP and the BWIC.
Mel, Mel, are you there?
I saw in the chat she had to just step off for a minute. She'll be right back.
Thank you, Ellen. Jim,
He's Vermont DEC retired, but I'm a non-voting member, but I'm working in Quebec on Missisquoi Bay drainage.
No. Go ahead, Mel. Mel, are you back? Nope. Okay. Brian.
Hi, folks. I'm Brian Voigt, working with Lincoln on the Basin 8 Clean Water Service Provider.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry, there's a random dog in my backyard, so I'm just trying to make sure. Okay. Just trying to make sure he's not lost. Sorry.
All good.
I'm Mel, Franklin County NRCD.
And Dean.
Good morning, everybody. Dean Pierce, staff, and as some of you might have seen in the note that was on the screen, I have to excuse myself sharply at noon, but Emily Adams from NRPC will be joining just to make sure that things, she can troubleshoot if there are some issues. And I know that there were some folks who joined late, so I don't know if was anybody missed. I know we have a lot of folks here today.
Mm-hmm. Speak up if I missed you. I think I got everybody, but okay. So thanks everybody for being here. Our meeting protocols are, be respectful, try to keep your screen on, be engaged. Sorry, cheat sheeting here. If you have a question, you can use the raise hand function. You can type it in the chat. We'll do our best to monitor and yeah, make sure that your voice is heard. And thank you. Thank you, Dean, for putting that up. Conflict of interest. This is a standing item, as Dean noted in the meeting packet. We don't have any applications, so don't anticipate that. But if anyone feels the need to declare a conflict of interest, now is the time. Great. Thanks for sending out that agenda and the meeting packet as usual, Dean. I hope folks got a chance to look it over. We've got some great topics to cover. Just sort of move through our sort of standard stuff and looking forward to the next round opening up in a couple weeks. Any adjustments? Anyone need to add anything?
The only thing I would point out, Lindsay, is that the agenda, as it went out, just had a generic Forest Parks and Recreation staff. Silas Rainville will be the person making the presentation, and he's going to be joining us closer to 12 o'clock.
Great. Thanks for that update, Mel. The dog is safely back with his owner.
I was just curious if not at this meeting, if on a future meeting, we might be able to get a little more information on the Lake Carmi project. Curious minds want to know.
I'll jump in and Peter, I'm surprised I haven't, maybe you raise your hand. I was at the Clean Water Board meeting yesterday, and I know that someone who has a camp on the lake gave a report. It sounded very, very positive, but I don't want to steal any of Peter's thunder. I also don't want to limit his whatever he might say today, but I'll just share that what I heard yesterday sounded positive according to one gentleman who spoke. But Pete, maybe you would want to come to the next meeting with something more formal.
Yes, I can do that. All the reports we hear is that the water is the cleanest it's ever been from eyewitness accounts. So we're very happy to hear that. Right now, we're going through the post-treatment process. And Ava, who's also in attendance at this meeting, our FWC coordinator, she has been taking the post-treatment samples at the lake. And all of the results that we've seen so far are all coming within the requirements of the permit. So everything is good.
Glad to hear that. Next agenda item is approving the minutes from our last meeting. So folks hopefully had a chance to review those. If anyone has any questions, this is a great time, or any corrections they want to note. And if not, I'd appreciate a motion to approve.
And I would interject that Heidi's name was misspelled, and we will avoid that in the future. And there are some typos as well. We'll do a better job policing.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Great. We have a motion from Heidi. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Is there a second from Alaire and Ted? Competing seconds. All in favor, please indicate by either physically raising your hand or virtually raising your hand, and I will run through the names. So all in favor indicate. We've got Lindsay, Heidi, Alaire, Ted, Kent. Scroll down. Sarah, Dan. Are there any other voting members? Beth. I think that's all our voting members. Awesome. Great. Motion passes. Minutes approved with the corrections noted by Dean. And next up, any budget adjustments? Oh, did I jump ahead? Are we at public comment? Sorry. Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to budget adjustments. And Dean indicated in the meeting packet there is one.
Yeah, well, it's really more progress reports. They haven't been finalized, but this is a standing item for folks who are to this Basin Council. And when requests are filed under the book adopted policy that allows certain amendments to budgets to be processed administratively or by staff in conjunction with the chair and vice chair, we have received two that would be in the staff realm that are in process. One related to the Trout Brook dam removal and the other one related to the Sleeper Pond dam removal. And they would not have a material effect on cost effectiveness given the overall. But those have not been finalized. I'm doing this for your information purposes.
Great. Any questions on those folks, or moving on? New representatives. Another standing item.
And none to recognize today.
We'll be able to move on then to Chris's presentation.
And Chris and I did.
That's a little too formal. Yeah, I don't know if I think it's more of a discussion. Dean, you invited me here to talk about what the updates to, was it cost rate methodology or something else?
It is in fact the cost rate methodology, and I apologize. I thought the word presentation was included in the email with the invitation.
Okay.
But if not, then I can do a one slide, or I can have it on, and then I would let you run with things. And I will also apologize for one aspect of the packet. You and I had talked about this enough, Chris, for me to believe that the signing of the new cost rate methodology was imminent. And I wrote, it may not be entirely consistent in the packet. I think in one place I might say it's been adopted, and in another place I might have hedged, because when I checked with you, it had not been signed last week, but you thought it would happen this week. So has it in fact happened?
No, it has not yet been. So the methodology itself doesn't need to be signed, but we had a public comment period on the methodology. We received comments from 4 different organizations, about 25 comments in total, and we prepared a responsiveness summary. That responsiveness summary has been drafted and circulated up the chain, and I think it is currently with our department leadership. And I haven't heard anything since, but I am hopeful that it will be approved for us to then move forward and finalize the cost rate methodology that we published. So it has not been officially finalized, but it's in the final steps, and it could happen in hours or days, or it could be another week or two, TBD. The cost rate methodology, for those who just need a quick reminder, is the formula we use to take the dollars that you are given. Let's say it's $1 million or whatever it might be for your budget in any given grant. And then we translate that into your target. And the methodology is sort of complex. It's based on historical data, and there's a weighting process as well, depending on what's happening in a given sector. Not all sectors are treated equally. But the end result here is your target. And the original cost rate methodology was developed in 2020 or so. And as you have all been, you're all aware, we have had COVID and we've had inflation. And we also have a lot more project data. So in 2020, we were looking back in the 2018 or 2017, maybe 2019 project data to see what the costs were. We have more projects, more project data, and we have inflation, and we accounted for that. And that has affected your targets in your basin, basically reducing them under the draft proposed methodology. So I think Dean just wanted to highlight what the reductions were. This is still, again, draft form, but if everything stays as we expect it to, then these would be your official numbers. Not quite 50% reduction, but pretty close. There you have it, 48% reduction in your target. So I think that's the presentation. I don't know if there were follow-up questions or, well, I guess when it's finalized, we can talk more about logistics and what this means. We've heard from, various colleagues that they're worried about the TMDL in general and what this means for the TMDL. And yet, even though the cost rate methodology is showing increased costs, the QuIS system is actually performing quite efficiently and as designed, because you're chasing your targets. You're incentivized to look at cheaper projects. And so across the entire system, the average cost for per kilogram reduced is $8,000, which when you compare it to other programs, it's like ridiculously efficient. So kudos to you. To the extent that the methodology is changing and you might be more willing to consider more expensive projects, like that's also a good thing. Stormwater is expensive, and maybe you'll be able to fund some more stormwater projects. And hopefully you'll be willing to look at that with the new revised methodology and your new targets. So I guess that's the big picture I have to say about that, and open to any questions or thoughts.
If I can interject, Chris, you mentioned comments bringing up, what does this mean for the TMDL? What about other comments, and what issues did those raise?
I prefer to just rely on, because it's in draft form, but also because it's a formal process, I'd prefer just to rely on the comments received and the formal responsiveness summary instead of paraphrasing them. But I will say there were a lot of comments that were not about the cost rate methodology. I think people took the opportunity to talk about the system in general, and so you'll see that. Maybe over 60-70% of the comments were not actually about the cost rate methodology itself.
Go ahead, Mel.
I'm not sure if we have any answers for this yet, but I'm just curious as to how that as a project manager, how is this going to change what projects we bring forward and how they're evaluated by the BWIC, if at all?
Well, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to speak for the BWIC and I don't want to tell the BWIC what to do, but the numbers change the risk profile of any given project, making more expensive projects more achievable, because with lower targets, that means you can have higher cost efficiencies. So let's say your average cost efficiency that you're willing to fund was like $40,000 a kilogram. I don't know, just throwing out a number. The new numbers might be like, oh, well, we're actually, we don't want to fund everything at $100,000 a kilogram, but, if we're funding all sorts of efficient things, maybe we can look at a $60 or $70 or $80,000 a kilogram stormwater project. It raises the threshold of what you could consider, or what the BWIC could consider as being within, a possible funding range. That's the practical effect. Which it should, right? I mean, with inflation, costs are going up. And so you would want to say, hey, this project is efficient, but, it's more expensive. But compared to this, whatever floodplain restoration project is in line with other floodplain restoration projects, it's still pretty efficient. You'd want that to be accounted for in this new system, which is what, that's what we're saying we did. Yeah. But you still have your targets and your responsibilities. And so there is a dynamic within your term. Like, I recognize that earlier on in your 5-year term, you're going to want to fund more cost-efficient projects and bank those as a BWIC. And then when you say, oh, we have X amount of projects under our belt, we can actually take on some more expensive projects because we feel comfortable that we can absorb those and not affect our ability to achieve our target. It's not so expensive that, spending this money will put us in a hole. Yeah. Dean.
Mel and I have been trading some messages on a related topic, if not on this one exactly. And it has to do with the fact that many of the QISs and the basin councils were encouraged to look at some kind of threshold. And Mel, you, not stealing your thunder, but you had been asking whether or not the change in the cost rate methodology might result in a change in those thresholds in our basins. And just to frame it in the way I would frame it, the first round of funding that came to the basins were predicated essentially on an average cost of around $14,000 or $15,000. But even with that average number, the thresholds that were put into the policy were 30,000 for natural resource projects and up to 50 for stormwater. And the question that had been exposed was, well, would that mean that the thresholds will change? And it's under discussion internally as a QUISP, but my hunch is that it won't change, or if it changes, it won't change a lot, because when those thresholds were established, they were kind of forward looking, recognizing that the $15,000 average from several years ago wasn't realistic and that probably something was going to change. And in a sense, the system has corrected to better line up with the thresholds as they have been put in place. So long story short is that I don't think they would change, or I don't think they would change much, given that it's 30,000 for natural resource projects, and under the cost rate methodology, the stream project is going to go to around 21,500. Forest projects are going to go to about 19,000. Ag projects are down around 5, so it's lower, but developed would be 49. So if you kind of, there's certainly some room to play with on the natural resource side if we would be looking at projects averaging overall at 30. But again, I don't foresee them changing a lot. It wasn't something where um and certainly the Basin Council can discuss this. But I'm just kind of jumping on the fact that Mel and I had been trading some email messages on this topic, and I may know a little bit more following a meeting roughly a week from now.
All right. Well, I would say, you do have quite a bit of money in your basin, and I wouldn't be too conservative in closing the door to projects. And I don't know if for those, I guess Prairie Home Companion doesn't run anymore, and it's been off the air for what, 10 years or however long it's been on. But if for those who used to listen to that show, Garrison Keeler used to have a joke about everyone in Lake Wobegon being above average. And it's like, obviously that's mathematically not possible. So, your cost efficiency threshold, there's a purpose to it, which is it does signal, and it's a good signal to project implementers and everyone else, the public. Hey, these are good projects that should come to the QUISP, and the projects that are not in that range should look to other funding sources. And you don't want to spend too much time spinning your wheels with the wrong funding source, because that's just, frustrating and not good, right? So you want to have a good number. But, I would say, back to the comment about averages, like half of your projects are going to be above average cost by definition. And what I'm seeing is that everyone is using that middle ground as like, hey, we can't fund above that. So, look, you do want to be conservative. Things can go sideways with a project and then you lose it. And, there's risk everywhere. But, if you have a conservative threshold for what you fund, I would still say to you as a BWIC and a QUISP, with all the money and all the things that we're trying to achieve with the TMDL, be open to looking at projects that might be a little bit outside your range, maybe invite projects that are $100,000 or less to at least have a conversation with the BWIC. Maybe it's not a full-blown application, and just being upfront, and don't spin your wheels too much on inefficient projects. But there might be some projects that are a little bit more expensive than your thresholds that you still might want to fund. So I'm asking you to keep an open mind, keeping in the, that average, the conversation about averages here. But ultimately, it's up to the BWIC to manage risk while trying to achieve your target. It's a balancing act. And it's a different dynamic when you have more projects than money. When you have more money than projects, well, then, maybe you'll fund almost everything that comes in the door. When you have more projects than money, then you'll start prioritizing and say, okay, I can't do the inefficient projects because I have limited money. But right now you have more money than projects. So I would just encourage you to be having a little bit more of an open door and looking at stuff without making it more difficult for project managers and implementers and creating extra steps, because that's also a concern. But I think you're doing a good job. So, so far, I think you're making progress. And I don't know how much more you want to talk about this, but appreciate the efforts you're putting in your basin. And I know that things are moving along. So shout out to all of you. And I can come back to talk about this if you want. We can talk in 6 months about your efficiency thresholds, and you don't have to make any rash decisions either. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris. All right. Just let Dean or I know if there is more questions we can pitch on this topic, or if anyone in the WIC wants us to ask Chris to come back another time. Happy to continue the conversation. Next up, we're going to have Karen talk to us about Tactical Basin Plan.
Hi, everyone. So let me get it set up. And, you know, as part of the tactical basin planning process, we are welcoming and inviting and encouraging input from the basin water quality committees. So I know many of you have other opportunities to see presentations about the planning process. And so this is going to be a really quick overview because some of you may not. But then what I wanted to do too is with Silas Rainville talk about a project type that we feel could be a good one for the Missisquoi, and is this a project type that we encourage in the tactical basin plan by providing more resources, more trainings. You know, in a sense, we're sort of already doing it, but we're leading into then an example of how you as a board can provide a voice and influence the direction of the plan by helping us understand what project types really are ones we should be focusing on for the next 5 years. All right, so I think, let's see, share this document. No, present in Teams. We're not in Teams, right?
No.
Huh?
We are not in Teams. No, we're in
Okay.
Zoom.
All right, so I'm going to have to go to File, and no, I'm going to have to go to Present.
Do you have a green button down on the bottom of your screen that says Share?
I do, but I need to be able to start the slideshow. So, sorry, you throw me into another app and I just can't deal, guys. Oh, from beginning, here we go. All right, and now I will escape. I'm going to share. Let's see. Share screen. And then I'm going to go to PowerPoint. And I'm going to do from beginning. All right, we all good?
I don't think that's the one that you want to share, but it works. But we're seeing your notes and everything, your next slides.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Just hit F5 there.
F.
That should take you to your presentation, right?
Yeah, but it wants to show you this one, which is sort of weird. So maybe what I need to do is, well,
there are worse things in the world if we see your next slide in your notes. Right?
Here's hide presenter preview. All right, so we good now?
Yes, we're seeing your slide 1.
All right. So somebody remember that process so that you can help me next time. All right. So again, just a quick overview. Tactical basin plan. We do them every 5 years. This is up. This is the basin with Franklin and Orleans County. The planning process, we're actually doing the Missisquoi Bay and Lamoille at the same time. I'm getting help from Catherine, who's a Catherine King, who works for us and focuses on Whisper, but she is helping out with the Lamoille in the natural resource area. So at this point, we are into collecting data and starting actually to do presentations, which will happen until, through July, to develop strategies with partners, make sure that what we have for ideas is going to work, and then start reviewing some preliminary drafts. Then we'll incorporate in August, September, we'll incorporate feedback into the draft final plan. And then October, November, we should be holding the public meetings and then seeing it signed in December. Along with that is public engagement and outreach, and we do have a draft communication plan. So we will be systematically and with purpose at connecting with the public, and with a lot of help from the partners. So we know through our assessment report, which I'll provide you a link to, what's in trouble, what's possibly going to be in trouble, and for what reason. Is it a pollutant? Is it aquatic nuisance species? Is it the stream flows, the lake level is not adequate to protect aquatic biota? That's our focus. Those are priorities. We also have areas for protection, and this is from last year, the last plan, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be about the same. So we have higher levels of protection are proposed for the parts of the Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge, the Upper Tyler Branch, Jay Brook, and Big Falls. Big Falls is outstanding water resources designation, and one of the strategies we've had is to basically pursue that designation so that it can be official, but we do need community buy-in. The focus of the plans are, for the most part, have always been phosphorus reduction. We've got a Lake Champlain TMDL that we've got to meet, but we've also got the Act 76 framework, which you're all part of as a BWIC, to help implement projects that are going to address the non-regulatory phosphorus loading. And but we also have requirements through Act 121 to look at how we could promote flood resilience through natural resources restoration and protection. And conservation through Act 56 is something that is important for the state. We've got a lot of effort in that, especially the regional planning commissions are doing a lot of work in that area, and that's more of a question for us. What is our role? So special Act 121, Act 56 they're both new, and how we sort of mesh with those to help facilitate and meet the goals is part of the discussion. All right, so phosphorus reduction, we have a lot of accounting and tracking and accounting processes for that, as you all know. And just to show you that the last bar here is 2025, the first bar is 2016, that most of our phosphorus reduction is happening because of agriculture and their implementation of best management practices. We're getting a fair amount from developed lands, mostly the roads, because the towns are required to meet best management practices for roads that are hydrologically connected. Developed lands, we have there's not much going on there. Continue to work on that. A lot of new permits that once they are implemented, we'll get more restoration or phosphorus reduction from that. And then natural resource restoration, like the riparian plantings, I think is a big one. Floodplain restoration, a little bit wetland restoration, not getting much from there. So we'll get more information to you guys about specific numbers. Those are being calculated right now as to where we are in terms of meeting targets. So examples of flood resilience and protection, the strategies that we can pursue as part of the tactical basin plan is look to see how we can encourage river corridor easements, purchase floodplain restoration, which includes buyouts. How do we work with the community? How do we work with existing organizations like FEMA, with our VEM, and with regional planning commissions to identify which of those areas are going to be the most important for those practices? And we've always prioritized public lands for some of these natural resource restorations, so that will again be, we're assuming, going to be a focus. The town forest for municipal lands, state lands. There are opportunities for riparian buffers, perhaps. This is a list of all the state lands. We've got state forests, Jay, Long Trail, and Montgomery area. Wildlife, WMA is wildlife management areas. Lots of areas there. Elm Brook, I know, has ag land on it. So is there more areas for riparian planting there? Natural areas. probably in pretty good shape, maybe not an area to focus on, and then state parks where we have done some riparian planting. And one thing I want to say about this is to do projects on state lands, you actually need to get the project into a database, which is reviewed every winter. So I wanted to make sure that you all knew that, and I'm going to do a better job of making sure that we have ideas sort of lined up in the winter, and then we can include them into their database, which means then it's a lot easier for you all to make them happen, because Department of Forest, Parks and Rec or Department of Fish and Wildlife are basically on board if it's in that database. Okay, so regional partners, incredibly important. This is this great bench restoration that Missisquoi River Basin Association did, or was it the Upper Missisquoi Wild and Scenic Committee? So anyway, so more information, go ahead and, Google, you can Google the DEC Basin 6 webpage, Missisquoi Bay Tactical Basin Plan. You should get to a point where you can actually find the link to the last Tactical Basin Plan, which was published in 2021, an assessment report for the basin, which was published last year, and then the story map, which actually includes links to both of those and more of an overview and explanation of the planning process. The development of the plan, where we're doing the outreach now, steering committee meetings with partners. We would like to do presentations to watershed groups, Farmer Watershed Alliance, regional planning commissions. And so you are welcome to give me ideas, invite me to meetings, and we'll have a community survey as well. So I stopped sharing. And we're back to this screen. I know that we wanted to also get in the presentation about the forest roads, as that is an area that we think that there's opportunities for finding projects, implementing them, and meeting the cost rate methodology, or meeting the cost rate sort of limits that are comfortable for you. And I wanted to know, Dean, should we just go right into that, or should I take time to answer any questions?
Well, I thought there were some things that you were hoping to solicit some reaction to. Silas is not here yet, and I did just email him because I didn't think that we were going to move quite this fast. But I did just email him to say, can you come 10 minutes earlier, because he was going to join at noon. I was just looking for the questions that you had raised. I do see Jim's hands up, so maybe start with Jim's question. And I thought there were some specific non-forest roads topics that you had.
Well, this is the forest roads question, maybe for Karen. I did notice, or I did hear, that the Wildlands Act is being proposed in the legislature. I guess it was introduced last year, but it's being discussed this year. And in the event that it were to pass, and I guess I doubt if it will, but I really don't know, that seems like it would eliminate, and I could be wrong, but it would eliminate the ability for forests and parks to do projects on forest land. It's basically I mean, it's a two double-edged sword here. It would lock up the land indefinitely as wilderness or wild. But I would assume that if it did that, it would prevent any, I know in the J Forest, I think it was, yeah, the J Forest, there were a number of old ancient forest road improvement projects that have been implemented. I assume that none of that would happen as a result of this bill if it passed. And I don't know if Karen has any thoughts on that or not.
Well, it would be, if, let's say, do the hypothetical, if we get to a point where we've identified there are areas identified as what's the category, wild forever or
Well, yeah, but it's
wilderness?
basically a lot of the open, unused, there's, I forget, quite a bit of land in state ownership that would be uh, uh, captured by this law, including I did look at the map. I saw most, a lot of the Jay Forest and the
Yeah.
Long Trail Forest.
Yeah. So these projects are really important for those areas because they also include closing out forest roads. It's basically
Yeah,
looking
I
at
understand that. I'm just
yeah.
saying, I just wonder if they're going to be eligible if the land is essentially,
Yes.
so yeah, it's just something to
Yeah,
question.
and that's a good point to make. They are definitely eligible because if there's erosion going on because of the road, then we want to close it out.
Right.
And
my
that is
point,
a
yeah,
project under this category,
I
closing out roads.
understand that, but I'm just
Oh,
saying if the Wildlands Act passes,
yeah.
they may not be able to do anything with the areas that are captured by the law.
Oh, that would be interesting. That would not make sense, would it?
Well,
If there was active erosion.
yeah. Well, I don't think, I mean, basically would outlaw it would, I know that a lot of the Putnam State Forest is in the Wildland Act, and most of it is not going to be used for recreation. It's going to be used for active timber management. That would not be allowed. And I'm just guessing that any kind of project that involved equipment and would be not allowed, but I don't really know. I'm just raising that issue with you.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to imagine that if there is a old road that is causing incredible amount of erosion into a river, that could do, it's a natural resource. It's almost really a natural resource restoration project. But it would be accounted for in terms of phosphorus reduction still as a road project, because that's how we reduce the road. So you could put in huge water bars, take out culverts that aren't in meeting AMPs or the stream reg, the size stream sizing. What else? And you could replant with trees, which I think, not sure if that's going to get you credit, but you could certainly, I mean, it's Vermont. If you stop the erosion, trees are going to grow.
No,
So
I understand. I just
that's my
I don't know. The
perspective
law is saying it's locking it up. That's all.
Yeah. That's hard for me to imagine, but maybe that's something for people who are in discussions or providing comments to make sure they take that into account. So, anybody else for questions?
Alaire had put in the chat when you had the slide up with all the years, just a question about, is 2025 lower because we're not done with the year and you don't have all the numbers reported in?
Bingo. So yeah, so basically we won't change, because the way that we collect the numbers is we're never going to get the numbers that NRCS provides about the BMPs they support from to 2024. They can't give us it as the same. They can't give us the numbers for the same time frame that we're actually reporting on for state numbers. So it's behind. And so what we will do in the plan is explain that, and that you're really looking for the trends, long-term trends, or over long-term, and you'll be able to see improvements, and the improvements that happen, the BMPs that were adopted that didn't show up for 2025 accounting period will show up then in the 2026 accounting period. So we'll count them, but just not associate them with a year the correct year. So, the other, Dean, I was looking through the emails trying to think, now, did I write down what I had wanted to talk to you guys about? Do you remember? Because there's always a lot.
I was looking through my emails as well, and I haven't found it yet because
Yeah.
you and I send a lot of emails. Maybe it's just enough because Silas has entered the chat.
Yeah.
We don't have to extend this too much longer, but I guess I would say to the Basin Council members who are not otherwise plugged into the basin planning process that it's as a result of Act 76 that when the Basin Council model was established, people put two and two together and said, hey, these tactical basin plans are important. The basin councils could play a key role in the development. And I guess the only other thing I would ask Karen is maybe since the schedule or the plan for the adoption of the new basin plans for basin 6 and 7 would be that they're essentially endorsed at a regional level no later than October. When would you be looking for what from the Basin Council next?
So I guess additional discussion, because that's what I'm taking from you. It's like, do you have thoughts? Do you have ideas? And I want you to be able to provide them to me. And so I will be providing a draft of the strategies at least, and the chapter 4, which is about each sector, sometime in the spring, and I can provide that to you, and it can be a focus for discussion if you feel like there's an area that we need to provide more resources to, or we need areas to focus on, or priority areas to focus on. That can be just based on your own experience. If you want it to be a group discussion where you as a group think about it and talk about it, then what I would need next is maybe a date where we would have that discussion. And, you have discussions with us all the time on different levels or for different reasons, but we're all trying to do the same thing, which is how do we get more projects on the ground? And so in the basin plan, I can say we need more. Let's say for like stormwater projects, we identify the issue as not having enough landowners not having enough willing landowners. Then maybe we identify municipal lands as a possible area, and how do we work with them to do cookie cutter type? I don't know, but if you have ideas, they can go into the plan and sort of be documented that way. But we do it other ways as well. You ask for a training, we figure out how to get you a training, for example. So that would be the next step, I think. But otherwise, in April or so, you'll get a draft of the strategies. And I would love to hear your input, comments, ideas for priority areas, more resources.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse. My take is that the law was deliberate in saying the basin councils play this key role. So whether you knew it or not, basin council members, you have this key role. And so something will be coming to you after Karen shares the recommended actions. You said sometime later in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then this next section is where we've come up with the proposal that Forest Road skid trail work might be there may be opportunities in the Missisquoi for projects, and it would be a good one for all of you and competitive in the QUISP application process. So if you all agree after our presentation or in additional discussions, then we can talk about how to make sure that you have the resources you need, or that project applicants have the resources they need to make this happen. And then that's part of the basin planning process as well, or can be part of the final basin plan, so that we can make it so. Okay. I mean, I don't know if Silas wants to introduce himself or.
Yeah, I think also I just want to note that Emily Adams has joined us. Thanks, Emily. She's going to be taking over for Dean, who has to step off here shortly. So
okay.
Thanks, Emily, for being here. Thanks, Silas, for joining us. And Dean, do you have any last comments before you have to leave us?
Since this is our final meeting before the holidays, I wish you all happy holidays and a great new year if I don't interact with you again. But thank you for pardoning me.
Thanks, Dean. Happy holidays to you. So, Silas, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody, and then you guys can take the floor?
Yeah, sure. Hi, folks. I recognize a lot of names on the call, but for those who I don't know, I'm Silas Rainville, watershed forestry specialist with Forest Parks and Rec. I want to thank Dean for the invitation, and happy to be here to support Karen.
So what we will do is I will have I'll manage the slideshow, Silas. So when we get to your area, you can just say, slide forward. I think that would work. So we're going to share screen. And isn't it just great when you can remember what you did 15 minutes before? So I'm assuming you all see the appropriate slide.
Yep.
Great. So forest road skid trail improvements for phosphorus credit. So we know we have the funding for it, and the definition is it's really implementing the AMPs, right? The acceptable management practices on roads, on these roads or skid trails to address legacy forest erosion. So when we say trails, we're talking about skid trails, so not a recreational trail. It also includes stream crossings, which is different than working with town roads, where the stream crossing isn't part of like the, meeting a phosphorus or the final, state of being in compliance. So, and that it's sediment pollution is what you're really focused on. And in terms of the project, you also have to make sure that you've got permits in place, access license, easements, operation and maintenance plans are in place prior to construction. These aren't yet available for adoption for O&M, but hopefully within the year, because it shouldn't be very difficult to create the checklist and all the criteria for allowing that to happen. So why forest road projects in the Missisquoi Basin? We got a lot of forest. 66% is forested. And within that area, a lot of it is being managed for silviculture. I have here a map of where the use value appraisal parcels are in that orange area. And it's significant. So there are logging roads. There are skid trails. Why? Again, well, there's good phosphorus reduction costs. So this is from a earlier report, the report that Chris was telling you about. But for 2025, you can see the potential costs or cost rates. And forest is pretty low, 18,000 compared to all the others, with agriculture being the lowest. And if you were to look at this, and then take out any stream crossings, because the one opportunity that really should be, you got to remember, is that if you are looking at a logging road that needs a larger stream, a larger culvert or a bridge, to meet that final state of compliance or conformance, you can take out the culvert and then just have a ford. So that way, then you don't have to pay for the actual culvert, which you could leave to the landowner to install when they were ready to log. So, quickly we'll go through the definition, which I basically did. Then how do you find a project? What are the AMPs, and then phosphorus reduction. I'm going to go through them quickly, and then Silas will actually do a lot more explanation about AMPs. So again, we talked about this. Truck road and forest roads are the same. They're both addressed. So the truck, and Silas will talk about that. Finding projects, it's an AMP violation, but it's not under AMPs. And Silas will talk about that. You'll need to understand how to identify what a truck road looks like, what skid trails look like, but that's basically the first step in understanding where the projects are. And then talking to landowners, communities about where they might be. We are also developing a layer of where these areas might be. Once an REI, road erosion inventory, is developed through the app, it then populates a layer that then can be looked at for anybody who might be looking for a project. We have the Watershed Consulting is already doing a lot of these projects, or is doing some assessment, some project identification using the REI. And so I'm assuming that's where this layer came from, which I found when I was looking through our GIS site. Implementing the AMPs, it's basically you're bringing the AMP, the road up to AMP standards by managing stormwater. You're not allowing the stormwater to travel too far. And then also the crossing. The phosphorus calculations, what we're focused on is looking at the road segment that's improved, and it's 100 feet or 100 meters, but Silas can let us know about that. And then stream crossings improved. So that's what is going to give you points, meaning that if you do a ford, I'm not sure how much phosphorus reduction you're going to get. We have the tracking and accounting and a reporting system all well set up. You know all about it. The tracking is done through this forest road and trail inventory app, which is easy to upload. It's already out there, VT-AMPS. And so it's makes it a very easy process to collect information correctly and to store it for future use. Accounting, this is Claire's page, just to give you an explanation of how we're finding phosphorus reductions. Basically, it's compliance with the AMPN standards, does not meet fully, partially meets, fully meets. What you're focused on is taking the road that does not meet or partially meets and bringing it up to fully meets by implementing AMPs. You can then use that information to calculate the phosphorus reduction for each road segment that you are addressing. In the end, we get a readout like this. And so each type of segment, what is it? Skid trail, where is it when you first do the inventory? What happens when you implement all the AMPs? And then there's a very specific amount of reduction, phosphorus reduction efficiency that we've applied to that sort of project. And so here's some estimates of phosphorus reductions, kilograms per year for a segment of road. So if you have a lot of segments, you can see a lot of phosphorus reduction. And obviously it means that if we want to have a cost-effective project, we may need to look at larger areas and be able to go out and be very efficient and with the work that we do, so that multiple segments are identified. So next steps, we are working with Watershed Consulting to identify those critical source areas that will further allow you to focus your work. And the Missisquoi is one of those areas they focused on. So there should be additional information that will help you find those projects, or I should say project managers find them. And the tools and trainings that we have available include links from the Department of Forest Parks and Rec site on acceptable management practices, how you would put in those AMPs, which Silas will talk about more. tracking, so technical resources, how you do the calculation, which include a user manual for the erosion inventory, the Survey 123, which is the app, and then there's a webinar. And in terms of people, Silas Rainville and Dave Wilcox are the foresters for the department who are managing this project and are probably the best educated about it all. Claire is helping with the tracking, if there are questions there. And I'm usually the go-between if you'd like to talk to me first. And then the county foresters are becoming interested in this project area and will be learning with you actually how to find projects and implement them. And of course, they are the best resource for understanding which private landowners might be interested. So, Silas, take it over.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Karen. I think I am maybe at the end of my slides, I may drop those links in the chat just for the 2025 webinar because it's more extensive, as well as a link for the RTEI user manual, which just goes into much more depth than we're going to be able to get to today. So I guess I'm just going to talk real briefly about the AMPs and kind of go into road and trail definitions, help folks be able to identify these features on the landscape before kind of getting to the steps where they're completing the survey. So we'll go to the next slide, Karen. So very high level, what are the AMPs? So the AMPs are 26 practices we use during, before, and after forestry operations or logging, which allow us to protect water quality by minimizing erosion, helping us to spread and sink water in that forested setting. The AMPs allow us to maintain a natural stream flow, and like Karen mentioned, we do that by properly sizing and stabilizing stream crossings. We also protect forest buffers by minimizing harvesting within the buffer, as well as any type of soil disturbance inside that buffer or riparian area. And ultimately, this is all towards preventing discharges of primarily sediment, but also petroleum products or other pollutants that we come across during forestry operations. And so the AMPs, we apply them on truck roads, skid trails, stream crossings, in those forested buffers or riparian areas, as well as on log landings. We'll move ahead, Karen.
There we go.
Thank you. So the AMPs are the practices that we apply before, during, and after logging, right? Logging occurs only occasionally at 15 to 20-year intervals in most, generally in Vermont, although there's exceptions to that. But the AMPs we put in place after harvesting really need to be maintained, kind of in that interim, in that interval between harvesting entries to ensure functionality and make sure that the AMPs are doing their job. And there's a number of factors that can really affect how well AMPs are working. And those are site-specific slope and soils. If we have a site with very sensitive soils or that's excessively steep, the recreational use of roads and trails. If roads and trails in a woodlot are receiving a lot of traffic unrelated to forest management, and the AMPs that we have in place aren't being maintained, they can really be beaten down and again reduce that functionality. And then also storm events, like we've been seeing the past couple of years, as those compound over time. There too, we can see the AMPs lose their effectiveness or kind of get bypassed altogether. So all that to say, Vermont has a long history of forest management, and some of the practices that were put in place or maybe lack of practices put in place during harvesting that occurred, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It kind of left a legacy of, well, in some cases, damage on the landscape. And we kind of see these erosive features, as you can see on the left in the photo on the left here. And that's really what we're targeting. That's kind of what we're looking for, looking to address with these QIP forest land practices. Next slide, Karen. So that kind of gets us to eligibility and kind of the difference, which Karen briefly mentioned, between a water quality issue that falls into the AMP regulatory sphere, and those that are kind of, again, legacy issues. So we have what we call the 3-year post-harvest regulatory window. If there's a water quality issue that arises as a result of harvesting, and we're 3 years or less out from the harvest, well, that kind of falls under the regulatory jurisdiction of the AMPs, and it wouldn't be eligible for QIP funding. So again, we're looking for legacy issues here, those out beyond that 3-year window. And conversely, and as folks probably know, practices we do put in place with QIP funding for uneligible projects, no harvesting can take place on that parcel, at least harvesting that uses the roads or trails that get addressed with this funding source. Another question we get asked fairly often is whether UVA or current use enrolled properties are going to be eligible for this funding source, and the answer there is yes. So a water quality issue on the current use parcel may or may not be an AMP violation. It can affect UVA eligibility, but it may not be a regulatory issue, so to speak. So it's kind of a fine distinction, but suffice to say, for the time being, UVA enrolled properties will be eligible. And another factor affecting eligibility is the purpose of the roads or trails on the property. So the roads or trails we're hoping to address really need to be designed primarily for forest management purposes. That needs to be their intended purpose. And also, QIP practices, we're not going to allow the conversion of a forest truck road or a skid trail to a new use. So we can't take a skid trail and convert that to a single track mountain bike trail or a walking path or an ATV trail. A type of trail that would not be compatible with forest management going forward. We have decided that limited recreation as a secondary use on these roads or trails will be acceptable, provided that the AMPs that are put in place are maintained over time. And lastly, and this is kind of a new development, maple sugaring access infrastructure, so haul roads and access trails kind of in a sugar bush setting are, at least for the time being, eligible for QIP funding and these types of projects. And certainly we will let folks know if that changes, but that's what we're going with for the time being. Next slide, please, Karen. And again, seeing the names on the call, I'm realizing this may be review for a lot of folks, so apologize if that is the case. But we're going to just cover some basic definitions. And one of the first questions in the RTEI survey is, what you're looking at, whether it's a truck road or a skid trail, and whether that feature is permanent or temporary. And how that question is answered affects what questions are populated in the survey and the scoring. So it's important that we identify these features correctly. So right off the bat, forest truck roads, we define these as running from a public road to a log landing, right? So they're designed for vehicular traffic, really log trucks, but also passenger vehicles. And, these are the roads we use during forest management to transport forest products from a landing to, a mill, a log yard, wire or processor. And forest truck roads can be temporary or permanent. We're not going to go into that distinction right now, but I would, again, encourage folks to look at the user manual, because getting that right is also important. And the practices we put in place are going to differ based on whether the truck road is temporary or permanent. Next slide, please, Karen. So here's a horrendous map I put together a while back. It kind of illustrating what a truck road is and is not. So we're defining truck roads, right, as private roads that run from a log landing to a public roadway. They are not private residential roads or driveways, providing access to permanent dwellings. So in this case, kind of the green feature here, right, runs from the public road to the house site. Beyond that, the purple feature is what we consider the truck road. So that's where the driveway ends to the log landing, and then beyond the log landing is where we'll find the skid trails. And also municipal roads subject to the municipal roads general permit also would not be considered a private truck road in this context. Next slide, please. Skid trails. We define skid trails as being designed for logging equipment to transport forest products to a landing site, right? So they're used by skidders or forwarders, other types of felling machinery like feller bunchers or harvesters, and really they're not designed for passenger vehicles or vehicular access. So these are the features on the landscape that run from the log landing, where forest products are yarded to the stump, the tree that gets cut in the woods. Almost always skid trails are built with native material. We're draining skid trails and helping spread and sink water using water bars. So kind of those surface diversion structures, and stream crossings on skid trails are almost always temporary. Next slide. A few more examples of skid trails here, kind of on your left. Looks like what might be an active harvest. Some rutting going on. We don't have any practices in place yet. Maybe there's some temporary water bars up above where we can see at the height of land, but this job hasn't been closed out yet. Whereas the photo in the middle and on your right, there's some water bars in place, and likely these skid trails are in the process of being closed out and put to bed following the harvest. We'll move ahead. So again, what is not a skid trail? And there seems to be some confusion on this point. Skid trails are not rec trails of any type. So bike trails like the single track we see here, walking paths or ATV trails. Any of these trail types that really just aren't compatible with the larger logging equipment we see in modern forest management, it is not going to fall under the skid trail category. So again, reinforcing this point, but if skid trail is designed solely for these types of uses, it's not going to be eligible for forest project type funding. So really briefly, we're just going to get into some of the improvement practices that we're looking to put in place with this funding source, bringing road and trail segments up to AMP standards. Segment lengths, I don't have a slide on this, but we'll just add it very briefly. We're shooting for 100 meter segment lengths with the RTEI survey. It's roughly 328 feet. There's some allowance for variability there, but the segments cannot be greater than 400 feet. Anyways, so improvement practices on skid trails, pretty straightforward stuff. We're trying to spread and sink water, prevent water from concentrating, picking up velocity, and really, generating erosive force. And so we do that by installing diversion structures to AMP spacing. That's generally water bars, or a variation of water bars, such as a pole bar, which kind of has wood and kind of constructed integrally or into the water bar itself, which kind of helps with resiliency. There's a number of variations that we can look into putting in place, but for the most part, these are surface diversion structures like what we're seeing in the pictures here. We're also grading and shaping the trail surface, any rutting or existing gully erosion. We want to address that when we're bringing the trails up to standard. We're stabilizing, properly sizing, and actually, like Karen mentioned earlier, in most cases, actually removing stream crossings if they are existing on the site, kind of turning those crossings into fords, making sure they're stabilized. But yeah, just pulling that crossing structure if we're on a skid trail. And lastly, in some cases, we're closing out segments permanently. If a skid trail or a skid trail segment cannot meet the AMP standards, so say a segment is very steep, we're not going to be able to stabilize it correctly. It's essentially inoperable, or we can't operate on it without having an impact. Or a trail is located within the forested buffer, and there's a good route, or we can reroute it to a better location, then we're going to look to close out those segments permanently. And so that's essentially just going to look like, what we would do to bring a trail up to standard. We're gonna be installing water bars at AMP spacing, but we also might try to scarify the soil surface to try to get some natural, tree regeneration on that trail segment, and we may also be cutting trees down to try to discourage future unauthorized access on that trail segment. Now, next slide, please, Karen. And so some additional improvement practices on truck roads. Oftentimes, if it's a permanent truck road, we're going to be looking to recrown and grade that road profile or surface, as well as the shoulder, kind of building up the road surface so that it sheds water effectively. And again, that is generally on permanent truck roads. On temporary truck roads, we may be using other practices similar to what you see on a skid trail, so surface diversion structures. We may be installing new road surface material, like the gravel you see in the upper photo here. Generally, if the trail or road rather is ditched, we're going to be installing ditch relief or disconnection culverts at the spacing described in the tables in the AMPs. Be armoring those culvert outlets, and again, if it is a permanent truck road and there are permanent stream crossing structures, we're going to make sure those structures are correctly sized based on drainage area, and again, based on the AMPs. And lastly, just stream crossing improvements. Again, this is kind of a trickier area, and I think we're still in some discussions as to whether permanent stream crossings are really going to be a cost-effective or best bang for your buck in terms of phosphorus reductions. But we figured we'd cover it here. when we're trying to bring a segment up to standard that has a stream crossing, any failed stream crossings, we're going to try to, at the very least, stabilize. If that structure is undersized, we're going to remove and replace it. Again, the structure is sized according to the correct drainage area. And that's in Table 2A in the AMPs. Any flow, overland flow along the road or trail or through the ditch, we're going to try to disconnect that before it reaches the stream and prevent any sediment, associated with those flow paths from reaching the stream. And lastly, we're going to try to armor the inlets and outlets of culverts. And in the photos here, you can kind of see a failed culvert on, I'm actually not sure, it may have been an old truck road. And then in the picture at the bottom, you see what, in most cases we're going to try to do on skid trails. That is, if there is a failed culvert, we're going to try to pull it out and turn that into a ford. So, in that bottom picture, the culvert's been pulled, the banks have been stabilized, and those approaches have been seeded and mulched. So ideally, that's going to revegetate and be pretty stable over the long term until the next harvest entry. When a logger does come back in, they can put a temporary structure in place there and use that for the course of the harvesting, and then remove it, seed and mulch again. And that's it. Bye, Ted.
We did have a question in the chat. Could you clarify the use of the driveway segment of the access to a public road by trucks, please? It looked like it was exempted from the program.
Yeah, sure. So driveway segments that run, from a public road and provide access to a permanent house site. And I don't know if this is like in policy just yet, but I think we're defining permanent house sites as those with a septic system for whatever reason. We are not considering those truck roads. That's a different type of private road, and it wouldn't be eligible. So again, I know no driveways. Karen, I don't know if you have anything to add there, but I think that's where our conversations landed.
It may be okay if there's a hunting camp on the road. Right. There are areas where it's a little bit gray.
Yeah, that was my question, and I was just wondering because it looked like in the image that you shared that there was the truck route connected to the road by the driveway for the private home, so they would be using that road. But and it also is tied in with my other question about Class 4 roads that aren't maintained by municipalities. So it's along that same line, there might be a home on it, but it's primarily a truck route. So those would not be captured in this program.
I can add one thing before Silas answers, and that's that we're going to have a private road project type. And so the idea was we could actually help fix that road, that private road segment, but we're going to use another project type and another phosphorus reduction calculation. So
got it. Thank you.
Silas might have more.
I don't think I do. That was good. But I guess I would say, there are certainly going to be cases, and there are cases where it's unavoidable during forest management to use the driveway, or it's necessary for log trucks to use the driveway to access a landing site. I think the reasoning was just that we wanted to kind of avoid those situations where the impetus behind this project was really to get a nice new driveway and not forest management purposes. So, and I think that was kind of the only way we could find around that.
Alaire?
Yeah, thanks. I have a couple of questions for both of you. This was super helpful presentation. I guess my first one, Karen, when you were talking about the stream crossing improvement from removing a culvert and replacing it with a ford, I wasn't clear that that would be considered like a improved crossing. And it looks, but then Silas, your presentation did suggest that. That's my understanding too, that like when appropriate, we want to not have culverts and have fords. So is removing a poorly functioning, undersized culvert, building a really nice ford, is that something that this funding can be used for, just to confirm?
Yes.
Rather than replacing it with like a bigger, like a bridge or a bigger culvert.
Right, right. What we'd really love to see is that then the next person who comes in uses a temporary skidder bridge instead of a culvert. And I know you'd get the credit for me moving the segment from not meeting to meeting, but you may. One thing I'm not sure about is I think you then get another credit for enhancing floodplain connection. And I don't know how much it would be if it's a lot, but and it's cheaper, right? I think the only issue you're going to have is with the sugaring woods, where the landowner needs to have that bridge probably, and or a culvert. And do you want to actually then add that to the project cost, because it may not be cost effective then? But then again, there's always opportunities to have cost share. So that's the one thing just to keep in mind.
Okay. Maybe more of like we need to talk that through. I mean, I think in my mind, it's always, even if you're looking to have a better culvert or bigger culvert, it would be better just to have no culvert and to have a well graded, a designed ford where the stream can just flow across.
And yeah, and I guess building off Karen's answer, it is certainly going to depend on the level of traffic that feature is receiving, right? So, and contextually, if we're on a permanent truck road that is receiving traffic year round, the Ford is just probably not going to work. But
totally. Right, but when it's just out there and, every 20 years, 25 years you're going in, you can put a temporary bridge and otherwise have a ford.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, well, that's great. And I guess the second question I had is, you were showing the AMP app and the Survey 123 piece that you have developed, and we at Vermont Land Trust, we've been working on a forest road inventory of all of our fee-owned lands, and we worked with Dave just to get some input onto our process, but we've developed like a field maps tool because we have some different criteria we're looking at just in terms of our ownership. When you're talking about being able to like analyze this data, get some preliminary phosphorus crediting, that kind of thing, would it have to be in the AMP app, or is there like, I'm just wondering for our own process, and I think I definitely want to follow up with both of you and maybe have you come and give this presentation to our forestry and restoration teams, so we can, because other people will ask better questions, but just like wondering how we can best be set up to really do this as like large scale as possible, because it is a big priority for us, is this like ongoing improvement of our forest roads on our owned lands around the state.
So that's a good question. I guess I would say, I guess my question would be whether Dave, what Dave helped put together for you folks is like, analogous to the state land REI survey, because that's a process that's been going on for a while now. And if it is, it's probably not dissimilar from this private lands RTEI survey we have. And maybe it wouldn't take that much work to kind of transpose the segment data you have into kind of the new scoring we have. It's probably beyond my pay grade, but so I guess I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, Claire, I think if you want to write that question to me, I will then send it on to Claire, because she'll be the one, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because we started this process like 2 years ago, and I don't know if the phosphorus piece was fully developed yet by you all and kind of how that's working. So it may be that we just need to align it a little bit better.
Right, right. Definitely include the magnitude, how
Mhm.
it's a lot of data. And
Yeah.
so it'd be worth.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mel.
Thank you, Karen and Silas. This was really informative. I have a few questions, but first I want to say I'm really happy to see that the sugaring trails are included in this project type because I just think that is so important for this basin in particular. And the district has been working with sugar makers for a couple years now, and I think there are multiple opportunities there. So I would encourage you, whenever you're in a room having that discussion, to really advocate for that. And then I'm curious, you did say you were going to have a private road project type. I'm curious why recreational trails were not included in this. And I understand that the use is extremely different. But yeah, I just think from my experience with forest landowners, it's a huge opportunity that is kind of missed out in this project type. And if it could be accounted for in another project type, perhaps.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, if it's a logging road, a skid trail that people are walking on and causing erosion to, you can go ahead and it's going to be used in the future as a skid road and a walking trail. I mean, a skid road and a truck road or whatever. But you're really wanting people want to fix it so that it's easier to walk on. If you use just the practices that are allowed for or the AMP practices, like the water bar, which is then going to make it harder to use as a biking trail, right? Or that you just need the I'm sorry, but ditches, rock line ditches. That's fine for a road if you want to crown it. Although that sometimes I wonder what the benefit is. But anyway, so you're just fixing it so it can be a logging road or a skidder road again, and it may benefit recreation, but you are not saying, oh, but we don't want the water bar because we need bikes to go up through here or horses or whatever. It's like, no, you can't do that. So I think that's the idea. And in terms of why rec trails aren't a project type, because they are funded through other funds and other grants. Forest Parks and Rec has a grant program for that. So we're just trying to keep things in their own area. If there's already a funding source, go there. You don't need to come to us because then we have to figure out a phosphorus reduction calculation.
Right.
Too, which is also something we don't always have the ability, or can't do that for everything. So that's the explanation.
Would you mind putting that in the chat, the Forest Parks and Rec program? And I'm curious, is it only for public lands for public trails, or would it be also for private?
It's probably just for public trails, like municipalities.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I can try to track that down.
Oh, thank you. I was going to Google it.
Thank you. And then I also just wanted to kind of start a discussion. I know you had the question of what is it like for you out trying to find these projects. And I think it's based on the regulatory aspect, it's quite difficult because many of the folks that we meet with are in UVA. And so I can go and see a forest trail and I can see that it's eroding and that it has issues, but I don't necessarily have the expertise that Silas does to go and say, okay, this is exactly what should be done here. And so even if the trail hasn't been used, folks, I would want to invite Silas or Dave or Charlie Hancock out, but there is that regulatory aspect where folks are a bit intimidated, and I don't want to I guess it's the same on ag lands as well. I don't want to result in someone being removed from UVA as a part of trying to get one of these projects done. Does that make sense? So I think there's just this tension there, and I'm finding it quite difficult to find properties with trails that fit into this very specific project type. because of the regulatory aspect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Silas probably has.
Yeah, it is a tough question. And oh, well, Mel, I think we've had this conversation before. I think if you can make the distinction between the water quality issues that are AMP violations, right? So those are, stemming from harvesting activity and within 3 years of the harvesting occurring. And those that are just water quality concerns on a UVA parcel, I think that's kind of the critical difference. And again, that's sometimes difficult to determine. But for those non-regulatory issues, you're welcome to invite Dave or I out, Dave or me out, and we're happy to take a look. And that's not going to be there aren't going to be ramifications for the landowner for UVA or any other regulatory issues. But again, that's assuming we're outside of that 3-year regulatory window. Now, inviting county foresters out is a slightly different, slightly different issue because it is the county forester's job to, administer the use value appraisal, and there are water quality or AMP requirements for enrollment in the program. So at the very least, if you are inviting a county forester out and there's a water quality issue on a UVA enrolled parcel, it's now going to be on the county forester's issue or on their radar. And, the landowner is probably going to be required to fix it at some point in the future, regardless of if funding is available or not, if that makes sense.
And would that impact the funding eligibility though? Because is it now a regulatory requirement for them to fix it?
No, right. So it would not be. So again, assuming that the issue is not an AMP violation, it's not within that 3-year, post-harvesting window. It's no longer a regulatory issue. It is a UVA compliance issue, but it's not regulatory. So it's like a fine distinction. But so like I said earlier in the presentation, water quality concerns on a UVA parcel are eligible for QIP funding, assuming they don't fall into that AMP regulatory sphere. I feel like I just repeated myself 15 times, but does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
And then, sorry, I'm asking so many questions. I want to give other people a chance. But I just, regarding the maple, the sugaring trails, is that, so obviously those trails are not going to be out of use for 3 years because it's repeated use. So I'm just wondering, how does that work?
Good question. And I didn't make that decision. But here too, kind of fine distinction, but we're not considering maple sugaring to be traditional forest management. And a water quality concern in a sugar bush that's the result of maple sugaring activities, say ATV or UTV use on roads or trails, that's not going to be something that would be enforceable under the AMPs, because the AMPs regulate silviculture, forest management, and logging. So it's still a water quality concern, but again, it falls outside of our regulatory bubble. So that's that's why it's eligible. Now, I do think there's going to be some concerns putting these practices into place in a sugar bush and maintaining them over time. And that's something folks are going to need to be aware of, because it's very difficult to, for example, just to keep a water bar functioning when an ATV or UTV drives over it, several hundred times every spring. So I think it's going to be tricky, but I am glad that it's an eligible. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that, I think the county foresters may be helpful in bringing in the maple producers, because they see the problems and they can then identify that it's not a violation, and they can then bring the project perhaps to a group that's interested in implementing it. So then everybody feels good, right? County Forest basically says, fine, go ahead, we'll pay for it. And they'll have ideas. Charlie said at one point for water bars on a maple sugaring road, you really need more reinforcement. So you may have to spend a little bit more money by putting a piece of wood, on the uphill, downhill side as part of the water bar. The other thing that Meg, that I really wanted to ask is, do you think you all could actually learn the techniques fairly quickly with the resources we have? Because that's my thought. When I did your training, Silas, I was thinking I could figure out where the water bar is supposed to be. I could size it with, have somebody come in with a backhoe and I could sort of tell them where to go. A ditch. I mean, I know sort of where a ditch would need to be, because the REI, the RTEI basically tells you where the problem is, but it also is telling you what the solution is. So the water bars aren't close enough together. Well, then you put one in there. So I think this could be a really good cost-effective project because you don't need an engineer, and you can train your people to do it, and you just get a lot more money in on, for the project. So whatever it takes to train you all, I think that would be well worth our time.
Lincoln.
Yeah, thanks. I've got one UVA question, and then I wanted to just give a little bit of an update about the forestry progress and outreach we've been doing in the Winooski. So the UVA question I have is, as far as we know, should we expect any changes in phosphorus crediting for forest road projects on UVA parcels?
Hey, Chris, are you still there? Chris Routler, calling Chris Routler.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
This came up in a meeting yesterday, and I don't know. Ethan and Claire are having conversations about it. The current state is UVA and listed properties are not a factor, but it is being looked at. And, whatever, there's a technical component here, but I'm pushing on the powers that be to say, look, if you were to say UVA would, parcels would have an impact on this, it would make it very difficult to implement because almost every forestry parcel is a UVA parcel. So more to come. I would say it's 50-50 leaning towards, I don't know. I don't know. It may be 60-40 leaning towards it not being a problem, but there's a real possibility it could be. TBD. I wish I had more info, but it may be some news coming out in another week or two, and we'll definitely share it.
I appreciate the information that you do have, and yeah, we certainly hope that it's as easy as possible for us to fund those projects on the UVA parcels, because theoretically those landowners already have some investment in conservation and preventing erosion. So yeah, briefly, just for the Winooski Basin, we've been really thinking about developing these projects. We hosted a training with Silas and Dave, came out in the Berlin Town Forest, and we've been pre-qualifying forestry consultants to think about doing this work and working with our conservation district, so people feel trained up and able to use the AMP app to go out and assess erosion. And then more recently, we were wrapping up an outreach initiative and partnership with UVM. I was working with Chris Routler, the DEC team, and South Lake QUISP and Pulteney Meadowy Conservation District to work with some lab students at UVM to develop outreach materials and help kind of explain the science behind this project type and put it into some form of outreach materials. So what we've what we've been delivered is a nice landowner pamphlet, as well as sort of the framework of a directory to provide to different project implementers or forestry organizations that might be interested in this project type. And it was definitely a helpful exercise in communicating what the QUIS program is overall and what this project type specifically can and can't do to our UVM group, and having them sort of reflect that back. And we have generated some interest amongst our towns. I think we reached out specifically to conservation commissions, and we've heard back from a handful that want to learn more about this. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I do have a link to the flyer that I can put into the chat, and if the BWIC here and Dean is interested, I can help sort of customize that more to your basin, just adding the proper QUISP email. But we did try to think about making that material and outreach useful statewide and across QUISPs. And that was another reason why, we partnered with a few different basins, is to think about how can we do outreach for these project types statewide. So it's, easy for whoever hears about this to find their QUISP and get what they need to in terms of resources to see about eligibility. And yeah, the directory is, I'm still working on getting ownership of that directory from the UVM students, but that would be another thing you could think about setting up, or using what we've kind of come up with is just, getting emails and getting interest into one place. So, if you want to do an info session or another training, you have some people who are already kind of, that they're on board or might be a partner. So yeah, happy to answer any questions about our efforts so far, but we are really looking forward to what comes out of the watershed consulting work, and thinking about prioritization on sort of the map level, and combining some of the interests we've generated with those priority areas. I think will be useful for us, and hopefully the entire QUISP network.
That's great to hear.
Thanks for sharing that document, Lincoln. That's great.
You're welcome.
Other questions related to forest roads? Okay. Well, thanks, Silas and Karen. Thanks everybody for the engagement.
Yeah. Could I ask a question? One last question?
Go for it, Karen.
So it sounds like we could have another meeting, and Vermont Land Trust sounds like you would like a meeting for your people. I think that we have in the Winooski Basin a fair amount of work happening. I wonder if we do another meeting with people who have done some work, and Mel, for example, the Franklin County NRCD as well, to do sort of higher level discussion and identify what issues are. Would that make sense to people?
Yeah, I think outside of the BWIC structure, but if you wouldn't mind sending out the notice, Dean will send it out to everybody and we can opt in. Yeah, I think that would be, I would want to attend. So
great. Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. We just have a couple pretty simple topics left, and then we can adjourn. Actually, one of the topics is adjourn, agenda items. But before we get to that, is there any future topics that folks have that they would like to do, like to hear about? It sounded like maybe more in-depth presentation about Carmi would be one of the things we could put on that list. But speak up, because it'll get captured in our minutes, and then Dean will use that to develop the next agenda. Anyone have anything they want to bring up? Okay. Anyone have any concluding thoughts or questions? If not, we can adjourn slightly early. Nice to see everybody. Thanks everybody for coming. We will close out the meeting at 12:54, and I hope everybody does have great holidays and thanks again for good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Happy holidays.